All right, and this is Gloria Nelson. Good afternoon. I'm with the TUG organization, and we are very pleased to have everyone join us today for Is Your Digital Transition Stuck on Paper, presented by Tony Palermo and his team. Before we get started, I'd like to do a quick plug for TUG. If you have not yet registered, made your hotel reservations, do so very quickly because the hotel is tight, and I cannot stress that emphatically enough. And we're very excited because this year we have some very engaging keynote speakers. First, we have on Monday, March 9th, Nick Tassler, who is going to be presenting our keynote that day. He's an internationally acclaimed thought leader, organizational psychologist, and #1 best-selling author of 4, count them 4, counter-science intuitive books on the art and science of making decisions and leading change. And on Tuesday, we're very excited to have the new Infor CEO, Kevin Samuelson, who will be sharing the changes coming from Infor, as well as Kelly Squazzaro, who is Infor's Director of Industry and Solution Strategy on changes and distributions in the distribution industry. So make sure that you go register and make your hotel reservations so that you don't wind up not being under the roof where all of your peers are going to be. So without any further ado, I am going to turn the screen over to Tony Palermo. And Tony, I'll let you know as soon as I see your shared screen on this end. And if you want to start from your first slide, I'm going to say, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I would like to thank TUG as well as everyone who is attending today. We changed the title to our presentation to Is Your Digital Transition Stuck on Paper? And the reason is that year in year, we talk to an awful lot of prospects and customers who are planning on expanding their EDI platform. But it always seems that another initiative comes in line ahead of that, and the start of their EDI program gets pushed out. And so for a long time, you could say, well, you could definitely get by with manual processing, but you can't do it indefinitely. And that's sort of changed to you can't do it indefinitely because the time is up and there's no reason to wait. The best example I had was just the other day. I was talking to a customer or a prospect that I talked to about 6 months ago, and they said, well, you know, if I do this, I'm going to have excess people. What do I do with those people who are entering all these orders? And of course, our response has always been, well, certainly you can repurpose those people into revenue generating activities within your company. That same company called me back and said, we have a sense of urgency. We have to go now because 2 of my order entry people are retiring and 3 of them have done intra-company transfers. And in the next couple of months, I'm going to be without all of that historical experience. So you can see that the sense of urgency is sort of transitioning. And today we want to talk about some of the highlights of going through that decision process to initiate and or expand your EDI program. So I've been around for a while. I've been with some fairly notable companies. Several of those were turnaround situations. And I can always tell you that the key to our success was always to automate all the functions that we could, where we could reduce the number of man hours involved as well as improve the quality. With me today is Brian Crumby and Gene Stewart. Brian Crumby is our technical CTO, and Gene Stewart is the head of our sales organization. A little bit about the Unilink group. We're an outsourced service like ADP. We have been doing this for over 22 years, and this is what we do. This is our lane. This isn't one of 25 things we do. This is all we do. We are focused solely on distribution solutions and implementing EDI. What's being done today about the manual input and piles of paper, and I'm kind of going over the pre-agenda here, what I'm going to talk about. Where does an EDI partner fit? What are some of the recent trends? and what are the next wave of changes we think are going to happen over the course of the next 1 to 2 years. Then we're going to assess the EDI's impact on your business. And most importantly, we're going to look at total cost of ownership, where value can be added, and what the opportunities are, or the cost of no action comes up in the decision process. So I guess I'm hoping that I don't have to convince anyone that paper's bad and automation is good, except for some of the nuances associated with people. There is no doubt that that automation wins the argument every time. A good EDI program has automated all of the data entry, has dealt with all of the business rules, can do all the data verification, receipt verification, all the compliance, the ability to expedite transactions and to turn transactions around much quicker, and certainly positions the company to be more competitive in what is a very competitive space. So to assess the manual processing, you have to look at which numbers are really hard to see, and that is the burdensome manual process on your internal resources, the impact of errors. Can you quantify your service reputation? How can a $1 transaction not drive money to your bottom line? Now, the first thing we need to do is to determine what is the cost of doing it manually. We've looked at it several ways. We looked at it on a line-by-line basis. We've looked at it on a per-order basis, and the numbers seem to come about the same either way you look at it. We did a research project with Honeywell and found that it's about 51 cents per line. And then we've looked at it on a per document basis and came up with that number of $12 to $15 per EDI or per order form, including all the lines. So if you look at that, think about that cost versus the recurring cost to solve the problem being $1 or less per transaction, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that there's anywhere from $11 to $14 of pure bottom line cost savings that can result from automating these processes. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into the ROI portion of the discussion. So what's typical for EDI today? You know, it's certainly gaining steam. We see it in our base. We see it in our customers, new customers coming on board and accelerating the number of transactions. But up until maybe the last 12 months, it's been very limited application. EDI was considered something to do with their vendors only. When you did it with a customer, it was forced implementation, typically on a kicking and screaming basis. It wasn't proactive. It wasn't strategic. It was more tactical to deal with this one-of customer or vendor that wanted to only communicate in electronic fashion. So people fall into either one of those buckets. Now, if you've already started an EDI initiative, we're not coming in saying that we need to replace that. We can come alongside of that and work in parallel to add more vendors, to start adding customers or additional forms into the process. Now, that's interesting. Okay, so what are the options? Well, you really have three options. You can do this in-house. You can partner with an end-to-end outsourcing organization, or you can have a hybrid based on ROI. and you can mix what you've already done in-house with adding a partner in to deal with the balance of that. So our advice is, if you're going to work with an EDI company, an EDI partnership, it has to be an end-to-end one source solution. You can't have people pointing in different directions when you're trying to solve problems or to secure opportunities. It has to be true commerce EDI. I think the partner that you select has to be trusted in the space that you're working in, and a proven provider. Customer care and customer sat has to be at the very, very top of their attribute list, and they have to be compliant with standards and protocols. So the other criteria that's essential is you have to have guaranteed success. That's our platform. No money changes hands until we have success. There should be no capital expenditures. You should have a very well defined implementation plan that doesn't add work to your internal resources, but removes work from your internal resources so they can work on other priorities. They have to have the ability to do ongoing coordination with your trading partners. And you have to have really good exception reporting and correction processes in place. So again, over the last 18 months, we've seen a tremendous hockey stick in the number of transactions that are going through EDI processes. Our core 4 transactions, which is probably true for the industry, are purchase orders, invoices, PO acknowledgements, and advanced shipping notices. Now we have a lot of customers now that are starting to move into expanding that into rebate processing. And I'll talk a little bit about that toward the end of the presentations. Also, it's always important also to make sure that you're doing business with a company that has already proven success with dealing with the large big box providers, Amazon, Wayfair, Walmart, etc. So if you look at the internal option, there's a lot of costs that you have to consider. Some of them are recurring costs, some of those are one-time costs, but certainly you have to have hardware and software. The software typically has annual maintenance fees and upgrade expenses associated with it. You have to have personnel. There is a learning curve, and we see many cases where the learning curve is longer than the amount of time the people stay in the job. So companies are constantly having to train internal people, whether it be internal turnover or turnover into another company. There are support and monitoring costs associated with this, both on a proactive standpoint as well as a reactive standpoint. So there's a certain percentage of a person's time that has to be dedicated to that. And then, of course, you may or may not have implementation fees associated with a van. Now, a lot of these costs are often overlooked. They typically are, people are looking at doing EDI internally and they're saying, okay, I was just going to put a resource on it and see where it goes. But those van fees, for instance, can be expensive, and it's another vendor that you're having to deal with in your EDI process. There's mapping software that can range anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 on the initial cost, and then 15% maintenance fees. And then you have to train the employees, and you've got to keep those employees trained, and typically they're IT type people that you're looking at anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000 per person all in. And then there's project management and coordination with all of your vendors and customers that you want to have connected to your network. So the outsourced service advantage is that all of the costs we just talked about are included. It's a fraction of the cost for the translation, in that that's what we do at a cost or below cost level to get the transactions flowing. And you would be down to a very small percentage of a person that will be required to help manage the EDI process. So with an outsourced service, you get an adaptable company that is constantly looking at new transaction types and ERP upgrades. We maintain business focus. Again, we talked about capital. There's no capital outlay. Customer service has to be a differentiator. And the ROI is, I wouldn't say immediate, but it's pretty near term. Oftentimes, if you start in the first 2 quarters of your year, you're actually ahead of the game and producing a positive ROI on these projects anywhere from 2 to 3 months out. So we also understand the challenges that the EDI coordinators face. Meeting customer enablement timelines, proper monitoring of production data, managing all the automated alerts, keeping up with the changing EDI technologies or changes that may occur from your vendors or your customers on their end or their ERP system, and making sure that we have continuity, business continuity and backups. So all of that is all part of working with a full service EDI partner. So Unilink is a one-stop EDI solution. We do it from A to Z. I'll talk a little bit about our implementation process. Is that once we connect you to our data center for the different document types you want to automate, we get a list of contacts from you. We ask you to send out a canned email to them, notifying them that we'll be in touch with them. And then we start the process of attaching them to your network and through our data center. And we will work with them to make sure there are minimal changes required, if any, at their end, and that we make this as easy as possible. Because keep in mind, if you don't get a high participation rate, you're not going to see the cost savings and the returns that you would expect if you don't get the majority of your transactions flowing through your EDI program. So at Unilink, we provide all the business qualified document fees. We include all the van service, our mapping tools that enable low cost fixed mapping is certainly a win-win. I think from a competitive standpoint, we are going to be able to map a form to you or to one of your customers or trading partners at a heck of a lot lower cost than you could probably do it internally yourself. We have people that do this day in and day out. We have a mapping tool that we call Smart Maps that enable us to take the business rules specific to you or to any of your customers or trading partners and make sure that we are adopting that into the mapping process so that they don't have to make any changes on their end. All of the project management, implementation, coordination is done by our folks. We talked about the mapping and production support, the continuity, and from a budgeting standpoint, it's a very easy model. When you do business with us, our agreement is 2 pages. It's month to month. We feel like we have to earn your business every month. And the structure is there's a one-time fee to map a form for either you or any of your trading partners. And then from there, it's a minimum of $150 a month for up to 150 transactions. But then there's a sliding scale where the transaction rate goes from about $1 per transaction, and it can get below 25 cents depending upon the overall volume. And that's all there is to it. So from a budgeting standpoint, you know how many POs you're receiving or sending, and you know each document type and how many there are. You can apply that to the matrix, and you'll know exactly what your costs are going to be and how much money that you'll be saving your company every single month for years to come. So we talked about smart maps a little bit, but this is where we handle all the custom rules. Our smart maps are embedded with the business logic to incorporate all the unique processes that you or your trading partners may have. The standard feature of Unilink mapping is all the extended functionality at no additional cost. And we can prove we've earned our spurs, if you will, through the many complex documents and deployments that we've done. So enforcing the necessary logic that's required to get good participation rates without expensive ERP modifications is very, very important to the overall program. So if you take a deeper look at your network, your EDI network should be able to handle cross-references for mutual ship tos, handling drop ships, product number conversions, calculated date offsets, unit of measure cross-references, complete with all the conversion calculations, any other custom cross-references or conversions that have to be done. And then, as I mentioned earlier, all of this can extend into rebate transactions. That typically is not an easy part of the business to manage. Oftentimes, there's a lot of revenue that falls through the cracks because of proper notification of rebate requirements. And so we have several dozen customers who have automated this whole process, and they have told us on more than one occasion that it is not uncommon for them to receive a rebate check before the invoice is due on the same items that they're getting the rebate for. So if you think about that, if all that process is automated, it's accurate, it's timely, and you have good terms on paying your bill, then oftentimes you'll see those rebates prior to seeing the expense. So we also extend the value to your customers, the ability to send invoices, advanced shipping notices, PO acknowledgements to your customers, streamlining not only the process between you and your vendors, but also between you and your customers. So, but most companies look at this, and we want them to look at it on a quantitative basis on the amount of money and efficiency that they're saving. But that's not the only advantage to the EDI programs. Think about the added competitive advantage, the sales differentiation. If your sales reps are competing for a piece of business with another company, and that company has full EDI deployment and can sell the benefits of that to them, that's certainly a competitive edge. Customer service and reputation boost, being the easiest company to do business with, the fastest company to be able to take an order and get it into the process and commit back to a shipping date is extremely important. Expanding the breadth of your business with existing customers. Think of it, if you're gonna enjoy the big boom that we're seeing in the markets today, and companies expanding and sales expanding, you can't do that on a linear basis. You can't have to add people for every order of magnitude that you increase in number of orders. So it's important to be able to grow without necessarily adding expenses on a linear basis. And then, of course, the effect it has on inventory and turns, depending upon your particular circumstances, and certainly I'm sure you can do the homework on that to quantify what that means to your company. So this is our diagram that really basically just tells our story. Basically, you see the Unilink customer, that would be you sitting at the top of the chart. We're the data center in the middle. We use our smart maps and API technologies to communicate with a buying group, a supplier, or your customer, and we will transact business based upon the format and the protocol that best matches what your customer and vendors would like to see. So the EDI consideration review is, what can your company reasonably take on today? There's always high demand for technical resources, and this is a program that will free up resources on your side and allow you to take pretty big steps into automating all of this order processing that we've been discussing. Now, you have to figure in the cost of inaction. If you're spending $11 to $14 per transaction a month that you don't have to spend, then there is a cost of inaction. If you have 1,000 forms that go back and forth throughout the course of a month, and your number is 15 to make it easy, that's $180,000 a year in cost savings. The recurring cost to outsource that to a company like ours would be under $6,000. So you've got $172,000 a year of cost savings that you do not get if you don't put your program into action. You also have to look at the inventory turns and your business efficiency. Orders come into people's desks, they go on vacation, they're out sick for a day or two, and orders don't get processed. If you look at the time that orders sit prior to being entered into the system, you can see that there's an awful lot of expense and revenue that is sitting there that can be improved upon. And again, we talked about the ROI is not out into the many years. The ROI and the payback is literally months. All of my life and all the companies that I've worked for, so often I'm always presented with, if I want to do something, I have to consider the quality, the cost, and the time. And typically I've been told that you can only have two of the three. We built a house a couple of years ago. We met with the builder and we gave him our time frame. And he said, well, if you wanted, it's going to cost more money if you want to meet that time frame and keep the same quality. If you give us more time, we can lower the cost and have high quality. If you want to keep the cost low and you want it quickly, your quality is going to suffer. This EDI initiative is one of the ones that is guaranteed to deliver all three. You get quality, you lower your cost, and your speeds are improved, your turnarounds are improved. So the next move is yours. I think TUG a year or two ago had emphasis on be a change agent, be an agent of change. If you don't do anything, it's still going to cost. If you do it on a reactive basis instead of a proactive basis, not only could you lose your position in the market, but typically things that are done on a reactive basis are going to cost more. Certainly you should look at the in-house option, but I can tell you that 10 out of 10 times we will win that comparison, because the cost of ownership, internal ownership, is just too high. The people costs are too high, the recurring costs and maintenance are too high, and those people should be not working on the EDI transaction part of your business, but they should be working on top growth initiatives within your company. And again, I would encourage you to only look at people with a proven success based on the experts in your ERP business. We always feel that we are a low risk, high reward option with predictable cost, predictable implementation times. And again, we only get paid if we're all successful. So if you're ready to move on from manual or from internal cost structure that you see is too high to support your EDI program or your EDI program growth, our premise is you can definitely do it, but again, you can't do it indefinitely. I used to work for a guy who used to always say, you know, you either get on the steamroller or become part of the road. And I think that's very true with automation and especially electronic communication with vendors and customers that you know is going to be accurate every single time and is going to be timely. And I would also challenge you that I must do something will always solve more problems than something must be done. I can't tell you how many people we see at the TUG event every year that say, yeah, I mean, something's really got to be done about that. And we would like to see them step up and say that they're going to do something about it. Again, we feel like we are the best value provider in this space. So we have time to take some questions. I think Gloria is going to repeat those questions for us, and Brian and Jean are also on the phone. But if you need to get in touch with somebody afterwards, you have questions, you can reach Brian Crumby. His email box is there. Certainly, I would encourage you to go to our website where you can see a lot of the proof source or the case studies that we've done. You can see our implementation plan. You can see all the forms that we are certified in providing throughout the EDI process. And I think, Gloria, we'll turn it back over to you.
Tony, thank you so much. We don't have any questions that have populated just yet, but I wanted to encourage anyone that has questions, drop them into the text on the tab on your control panel that's marked questions. And while we're waiting to see if anything populates, what I'd like to do is I'd like to, number one, commend you for using the term spurs, that you've shown your spurs, because we are headed to Dallas and you know everything is bigger in Texas, as well as the fact that you referenced last year's program, Becoming an Agent of Change, which dovetails into this year's TUG Connects 2020 as you take your change agent strategy and bring it into a 2020 focused vision. Yep. So I still don't see any.
We should change our description to last year I couldn't see very well, but this year I have 2020 vision, right?
I'm glad to hear that. Gentlemen, I don't see any questions that have populated. I know that they have Brian's contact information should anything come in the aftermath that they would like to have answered. And so I think that we can go ahead and conclude today's program. Want to thank everyone for attending, and don't forget, register for TUG and get your hotel reservations so that we can see you in Dallas. And as they say,
we will also like to invite you to come by and see us in Dallas. If you'd like to schedule an appointment to sit down for 15 or 20 minutes ahead of time, just drop Brian a note and we'll make sure we get that arranged.
Thank you so much, Tony, Jean, and Brian. And so without any further ado, as they say in Hollywood, that's a wrap.
Thank you.